Hi everybody, it's Michelle and we're here for our mental health minutes. Each of my videos is less than 10 minutes and we're covering my no BS guide to mental health. So I appreciate your likes, your subscriptions, your forwarding, your sharing. Let's try to spread good mental health information and not the virus. So one of the things that I want to talk about as we're talking about distorted thinking is the lack of empathy that a lot of us are feeling from other people, from our leadership in some cases, and I want to kind of explain what I think is going on from my viewpoint. So really what separates us from predators is the ability to have compassion and empathy for other living beings or life forms. And so we're seeing a lot of people not behave in a way that's very humane. Almost 100,000 people have died from this virus. It's certainly not fake. But a lot of people have bought into that and would prefer to not have to think about what's going on for other people. Maybe they cognitively just can't process all the data. It overwhelms them, so they just go into the black and white distorted thinking, which is either they're on board about wearing masks to protect other people. It's not about being afraid. That's a tactic that's being used. People saying, oh, you're afraid. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of catching the virus. I'm afraid of being a spreader. I don't want to spread it. And I was confused about this at the beginning too. I had a wait and see. I had a wait and see approach. And when I realized, when I got enough good information that this is what we should be doing, that's what I started doing. But I had to do research and I had to use a lot of complex thinking, and I have the time and energy to do that, and a lot of people don't. They're overwhelmed, they're stressed. I'm not saying it's an excuse. It's not an excuse, it's a reason, and there's a difference between those two. And hopefully they get on board at some point. And will they ever admit they were wrong, that they didn't, get on? No, they probably won't. And they'll probably have some alternative facts to point to the fact that it was all bullshit. Okay. But I know it's not. And I know that people are suffering, and I know that people have lost loved ones. And so one of the other reasons, just besides the fact that I don't want to be a spreader, that I'm wearing the mask, and that I think the masks are cool. I love wearing a mask. I mean, come on. It's badass. The other reason is to show empathy. If your parent has just died, or your grandma, or your child, and you're out getting essentials, and you see people walking around without masks, I mean, that's just kind of a big fuck you to somebody who's in grief, and it's not kind. So I'm going to encourage you. I'm not telling people what to do, but this is how I see it. I see that there's more predatory thinking because predators don't have empathy. They aren't born that way. If they had empathy, they wouldn't live because they have to kill things to eat. So I can understand why lions and bears and different animals don't run by empathy what they're going to eat. They just are opportunistic, and they'll pick on the weak or the available, the vulnerable. Why are we doing it as human beings? It could have to do with the brain and the supramarginal gyrus, which sounds like an awesome name for a band. That might become a new band. The supramarginal gyrus is in the cerebral cortex. It's kind of in between the parietal and temporal lobes. It's more towards the front. Your prefrontal cortex, the front part of your brain, develops last. And that is the most important part of your brain. So it's really a design flaw. If you think about it, like the most important part that helps us with empathy, that helps us with judgment, develops, hopefully by the time you're 30, it's developed. But this is why we'll see people, who are younger, not having empathy or awareness for what's going on. They have not developed that part of their brain fully yet. And that's why as an adult, I have mentees that are in that age group, and I'm double checking on some of their decision making sometimes, and they get a little pissy with me. It's like, why? And it's just because every once in a while they come up with some idea that's like, what are you doing? And you have to be the voice of reason as an adult, with people who are younger, to kind of nudge them and say, hey, have you thought that through? Like, are you really using all the brain here? And their brains will grow, and they'll start to understand it if they don't have any kind of damage from stress or neglect, or if you didn't grow up with somebody who taught you how to nurture and love and have empathy. I could think of one of our leaders that for sure didn't have that growing up, and I feel compassion about that, but also I know that we need to protect ourselves, and that if we have people like that in leadership, and you're not an apex predator right along there with them, you're not going to be taken care of. You can think you will be, but you're not. So it's dangerous. It's a dangerous condition to not have empathy. And that's the line I make in the sand when I'm looking at somebody with a mental health issue. Is it a typical one? Most of us, we're going to have anxiety, depression, grief, the grief phases of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. I think we all had some denial at the beginning of this because it just sounded so crazy and science fiction. But hopefully by now we're all on board with, in a community. When you choose to live in a community, you need to be part of the team. And if you don't want to be, you can go homestead off in your own world. You'll still have to be part of a team because we need each other. But who wants somebody who doesn't have empathy on their team? Not me. So you want to be checking in with yourself, and you want to be using that part of your brain that can have empathy and relate. It's putting, walking in their shoes, not your own. Some people are very stuck in the thinking of, well, what I think and feel is what you think and feel, or it should be what you think and feel. And that's where we go wrong. That's just crazy thinking. We all have our own brains. They're designed some similarly, but a lot differently. They can kind of be put into diagnosis, but this is how I look at that. Our brains are like snowflakes. They're all made of the same thing, but they all have some defining differences because it's just like a tree growing. It has the genetics maybe to become an almond tree or a peach tree or whatever, but the environment can shape that tree. I had an almond tree in my backyard in one of my houses, and it was this crooked little tree because it didn't have something to hold it upright when it was growing. And so that's what we're dealing with. It seems like, we're dealing with people who are having a lot of trouble with cognitive function. I think they can't really grasp a lot of the data. They can't process it. It confuses them, so they just shut down and they go into denial. And now this is all, supposed to be a hoax. It's easier to think in that black and white thinking. And when we have a sympathetic response, like we're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, we're scared, it's easier to think that way. So you want to have compassion, but you want to protect yourself from them. So you wear your mask, and I always carry a combat baton now, or a knife. A girl cannot have enough knives. And I know I'm a therapist and all that, but I'm going to tell you what, I'm a fan of protecting yourself. If anybody in America should be protecting themselves, it's women. And you just have to look at the data for that. All right, so check out your supramarginal gyrus. Make sure it's working, because we want to have empathy. 100,000 people have died, so we want to have empathy for those who are suffering with that, and be grateful if we're not. Yes, I'm in my bathroom because there was a lot of work going on the golf course. They were weed whacking and all that. So my first world problem for today was I had to record this in the bathroom. But I have a really nice shower curtain. So please like, share, I think this awareness of empathy is very important, and to be empathetic and compassionate back. Unless somebody's threatening you, then that's different. Then it's game on. You got to bring out your badass. So we will continue talking more about the distorted thinking that people can get into when their brains are stressed, and how to look for it in other people, and how to protect yourself. All right, see you soon.